Web3 gaming. Some call it the next big evolution of gaming. The history of gaming goes back to Pong, and then to console games, and then to PC games, and then to mobile gaming, and now what could be the next big revolution, Web3 gaming. The idea that these digital assets can now be owned by yourself. And it also disrupts the traditional economic model for games, both for publishers and for users. These are just some of the names that we've had on into the Crowdcreate podcast, where they share valuable insights on what it's like to build a game, market a game, strategize for building a Web3 game, and also just overall attracting attention from different users around the world, and even helping raise capital for your game as well. In this interview, we have on Kate with Decrypt, one of the leading and also well-respected publications in Web3. Kate is also a lifelong gamer. She shares valuable insights on what it's like to be a traditional gamer playing with Web3 games, and also what Web3 games need to do now to be able to attract users, attract capital, and overall build a better experience so that we can onboard the next billion users into Web3 gaming. You're going to want to listen to this entire interview. Thanks. Hey everyone, welcome to the Crowdcreate podcast, where we share valuable insights from thought leaders across the industry to help you be better and overall build a better community, build better products, and get more exposure to it. We're grateful to have on Kate Irwin with Decrypt. And maybe Kate, if you can start off with an introduction for yourself.
Thank you. And thanks for having me, Jeffrey. So my name is Kate Irwin. I am a reporter and the creative producer for Decrypt's GG, which is a dedicated Web3 gaming homepage on Decrypt. So Decrypt is a crypto native news publication that is a startup and was previously incubated by Consensus Mesh years ago. But last year we spun out and raised our own funding, and we are now fully independent, more or less. However, we are VC backed. So, sort of a media startup. And I think Web3 gaming is something that we have a very keen eye towards right now. And coming from the gaming world myself, I especially am very interested in Web3 gaming. And I mean, we see studies coming out that say that, like 40% of all on-chain transactions are related to gaming right now, which is kind of shocking, but also fascinating. And so a lot of people are looking at Web3 gaming, us included, with this sense of, okay, is this where Web3 and crypto are headed, is toward gaming?
Okay, that's awesome. So walk us through before we started recording. So you've been a longtime gamer and you've played thousands of hours, as you've been mentioning. So what do you see coming from Web2 to Web3 as some of the top utility and value propositions of Web3 in this new age of technology?
Yeah, so I think in traditional gaming, there's been some different movements over time. We saw mobile gaming really take off in the past, couple of decades, with the advent of the iPhone, where we've also seen the free-to-play model take off as well. And so the game industry's economic models have continuously changed over time. And I think that Web3 could be the next or a future evolution of the game industry's sort of economic model and proposal. So I actually am not I'm not like a maximalist in this sense. Like, I don't think that every single video game in the entire world is going to become a crypto game or a Web3 game. But I do think that if Web3 gaming as a proposition changes the way that gamers fundamentally think and feel about gaming and changes their wants and needs from a video game, that could shape the traditional gaming industry completely and reshape the economic models there. So what I think Web3 gaming could do to the video game industry is potentially show gamers how owning your in-game assets can actually be very beneficial for the user. So we live in this very increasingly digital world, right? But we don't really own our digital assets, especially in video games, right? all the IP belongs to the big game publishers. So if I jump into Overwatch, of my 4 Overwatch accounts, I can't really like easily or technically to be in accordance with Blizzard's like terms of service and their EULA, I shouldn't even, first of all, probably shouldn't even have 4 accounts. But secondly, I can't really sell them. I can't really buy other people's accounts. I can't sell, a limited edition skin that I have in one of my accounts that I no longer use. And there's all these different things in a game that I think Web3 is thinking about differently. And Web3 is thinking about like compartmentalizing each of those items and saying, okay, well, you don't have to sell your entire account that has all your memories on it. You can just sell this one item or, do this with that. And maybe you want to trade something with a friend. Maybe your friend got some skin in a loot box that you didn't. Okay, let's trade. Because I have long debated with myself and with others about the sort of loot box mechanics that the video game industry has, right? I mean, the traditional video game industry, crypto critics might look at crypto and say, oh, wow, like crypto is, so financial and blah, blah, blah. And it's like gambling, but video games have had this close tie to essentially gamified gambling for a long time, even in traditional games for the Western market. I mean, you look at like gacha games in the Eastern market, and those are basically a form of gambling. But you look at the Western game market and those exist in what we call loot boxes, right? So like that's the way that we make it palatable. And that's like how, even like children are technically like allowed to play these loot box games. But I think that the randomization is like, I think that Web3 could solve for some of those frustrations that gamers feel. There's just, it's such a big potential world here. There's so many different things that Web3 could potentially explore. I think though that the ethos change, like the mindset change for game developers and gamers is the most important thing that Web3 could potentially do right now for the gaming industry. To me, it's not even really about like money per se. Like I know, we see in CSGO, for example, skins are still selling for like $250,000, which is totally crazy. But what has to happen first for any game to be successful, Web3 or otherwise, is it has to have like a rabid community of gamers surrounding it. And that's how these in-game assets get assigned value organically, right? So like a lot of people look at the bull market and they think, oh, wow, like why were these NFTs selling for like 3 Ethereum each, which was like $9,000 at the time. And it's like, I don't know. I don't know why the NFT market was so speculative. But what I do know and what I do understand is this idea of asset value in gaming. It's like, if I play Mercy in Overwatch for 2,000 hours, if I've played her for 2,000 hours and I reach the highest ranks in the game with her like multiple times, and I really want the Pink Mercy skin, which was only available for this like Blizzard charity event that happened like 5 years ago, and I want that skin, I will pay big money for that skin. Wow. And so this is kind of like, in my opinion, like how value will happen organically. It's like, if it's an item for a specific character that you love, that you're like deeply attached to, yes, the value will be there and the money will end up exchanging hands. But other than that, I mean, we don't have to force value on any in-game items. I think it'll come naturally with good games. So if you make a good game and good characters, and then people get addicted to your game and like super hooked and they're like playing it so much, then obviously the items are going to have value based off of that. And that's might seem kind of like common sense, but I think a lot of people are sort of putting the cart before the horse a little bit, and they're forgetting, of course, that like, yeah, Web3 gaming is going to come as like this sort of second underlayer to all these good games that are coming out. But the thing is that in order to have a game economy that is powered by crypto or NFTs, you have to really think about that in the game development process. So it's not so easy for us to just say, okay, let's put WoW on chain. It's like, okay, no, that is not, that is going to be extremely difficult from like a technical perspective, like from engineering perspective. And sort of this conversation around interoperability as well. I'm not really a believer in that. I think a lot of people are using that as sort of like a hype word when they don't understand how much work and how much like just sheer amount of hours it takes to develop a single in-game asset. And then if you're trying to move it to another platform, you have to basically re-engineer it in the new engine or in the new platform. And you have to create, there's all these legal agreements and like IP disputes that could result. And there's
Wow.
all kinds of things. And companies don't really profit from interoperability right now, right?
Hmm.
They want you to buy the thing 10 times in every single game because they make more money. So until interoperability becomes like clearly profit motivated for the companies, like like the second it becomes like a clear moneymaker, that's when I think more games will become more interoperable. Web3 inherently is kind of interoperable insofar as like, okay, if I'm buying this asset on Polygon and I'm buying this other asset on Polygon, like I could theoretically use the same Matic to buy either asset, but I can't really swap them in either game, right? Because the game engine world is like totally separate from the crypto world. And in terms of like putting games on chain, that's a whole other conversation, which is sort of a pie in the sky dream, and is probably not super realistic. But I have a lot of thoughts about Web3 gaming, on-chain games, like, and some of it is hype, but some of it is very genuine and has like serious potential to completely transform the gaming industry in like a really cool way, in the same way that mobile gaming did for the mobile gaming space, or in the same way that like the free-to-play game revolution completely changed how every big publisher looks at like their economic model now.
Wow. That's fantastic, Kate. Thanks for all the insights. So what would get the attention of Decrypt in terms of covering just something revolutionary, groundbreaking? We know there's a lot of talented Web2 gaming teams that are now transitioning to Web3, but what really captures the attention and the audience on something new that's going to be launching?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first generation of Web3 games had this stigma around them, right? And even some of the creators of some of those games have said that to me, that they are fully aware of that. They know that their game didn't feel that great to play, and that it kind of felt like a gambling, like sort of finance thing that's slightly gamified instead of
Mm.
a game that has a finance sort of economic layer underneath it. So we're basically trying to flip it over and say, okay, let's put the game first now instead of the tokenomics and
Mm.
the financial stuff. Because especially for like Western gamers in America and Canada and I guess Europe, they're not so concerned with like making money playing games. That isn't like something that we expect. And so in terms of like the next generation of Web3 games, I think if we're flipping that model around and saying, okay, this is the game first, like all the Web3 games I have been testing and playing, I'm not even touching a single crypto thing. I'm not even connecting my wallet to a single, I haven't even connected my wallet to a single game yet. I'm
Wow.
sure I will, but I have yet to have had to connect a wallet to a single Web3 game that's currently in development that I've been testing, that are coming from some like really AAA developers and who do have very big crypto and NFT plans. But they're just like these early stage games where it's like, okay, here's the game, like here's Shrapnel, Wildcard, Dead Drop. Like a lot of these games, you don't have to touch a crypto thing in order to play them. And I think that is really exciting to me right now because we are truly putting the games first. And that is like putting your money where your mouth is. That is truly
Hmm.
like walking the walk of what everyone's been saying of like, okay, yeah, the next generation of Web3 games needs to feel like, they need to feel like Web2 games. They need to feel like AAA games from Riot or Blizzard or some indie dev on Steam. Like they need to just feel like they're just games. They can't feel like they're, oh yeah, there's all these tokens and all this trading and all this blah, blah, blah. It's like that's like a whole other thing. Like that becomes a bit more like a borderline like gambling game, right? And like
Hmm.
that's a genre. I understand that that's a genre, and I understand that there are some games out there that are going to be like that. But me as someone that comes from like a traditional like gaming background where I've been playing like Apex Legends and Overwatch and The Sims and Nintendo games and like all these kinds of games, I think I'm really excited because I think the next generation of Web3 games is going to feel more like all of those titles and feel less like just some gambling things. And so in terms of what excites me as a, as a producer and as a journalist, I would say, I mean, it has to be like a good game. It has to like look good. I mean,
Mm,
it has to feel high quality because there are a lot of games out there that aren't quite polished enough yet, and that's okay. But polish them up and then show them to me. So that's kind of what I think. And I also love developers who I have two cats also who like running in and
same.
yelling. Um, so he's telling me he likes Web3 games too. Um, so yeah, in terms of like another thing that I really get excited about is I'm a writer. Like I'm a
Mm,
storyteller at heart. And so if I see a game or talk to a game developer who is clearly also dedicated to the craft of like telling a story, creating characters with lore and all that good stuff, then I get really excited because I
wow.
see that the developer is in it for the right reasons. And
Hmm.
I see that there is some like beautiful story here, not about like the story within the story, which is like the game story, right? But like the story of this developer who really cares about the creative process, trying to, forge their way in Web3. And so there's a lot of people that I've talked to across like comics, film, before I like really doubled down on gaming at Decrypt. And for me, the people that I was always the most impressed by were the people who were super charismatic and like extroverted about what they were working on. Like
Wow.
you don't have to be an extrovert. Like I'm very introverted. I'm like pretty shy generally. And I always need to like recharge after like conferences or something like that. Because I get kind of like emotionally like burnt out from all the talking with people. But you just have to be like extroverted about your game. Like if you like live and breathe your game and you're the developer, like that's what you have to be. Because if you aren't going to be that like living embodiment of your game, like the number one fan of your game, like who else will? Right. So to me, that's what's really cool and really exciting is meeting people who like aren't stiff or corporate. Like they're cool, they're gamers, they're game developers, they're like super passionate, and they just come in with all this energy and they're like, oh my God, you have to like check out my game. It's like this. And then I'm like, oh shit, okay, I better wake up. Like I better drink another coffee and listen to this person because clearly they have some passion. And so,
Hmm.
yes, it is like cliched to be like, for me to just come out here and say like, oh yeah, be passionate about your game. But it's like, people don't realize like that it's okay to be like very passionate
Hmm.
openly and put it into words and like, tell me like, why do you care about this? Like, why does this character matter? And I think that's sweet. I really think it's endearing. And I think it is going to help destigmatize all of Web3 for the haters because like my dad, for example, ironically, is a big like crypto naysayer. And he just went to like the TED conference and he was like, oh, Kate, like there are all these, like Web3 wackadoodles there. And I'm like, Dad, you do realize that's like what I do for work, right? um, and so I kind of had to explain to him, I'm like, look, Dad, like what you're sort of throwing everything into this like big umbrella, but it's not, right? Like there are some people that are still kind of saying the same rhetoric that everyone was saying during the bull market, right? And I think those people need to maybe have a bit of a reckoning with themselves and like realize that the market is not what it was. If you actually want to work in Web3 and crypto, you do need to learn the technology to some
Hmm.
extent. You can't just run around saying buzzwords because I see right through that. And I think any good journalist sees right through that. Like we see, if you're just like throwing around the word metaverse, but you don't know what it means, like please, like just Google like what is the metaverse, and like you'll see that there is no like clear definition. And
Yeah.
that's the crazy thing. And also the metaverse is not inherently Web3. I am of the strong camp, in my personal opinion, about the metaverse is that it's not inherently Web3. Like to me, metaverse equals video game. Like they are like basically the same thing to me. And yes, maybe the metaverse is like a broader thing, but I don't think us being in a Zoom call is the metaverse. Sorry,
Oh,
I just
interesting.
don't.
Wow.
So to me, like growing up in like virtual chat rooms online, that to me, where I'm like putting on a new avatar and becoming like a 3D character that I dressed up or something like that, that to me feels a bit more like a metaverse, but that also is a game, right? Like VR chat is a game. People think, oh, VR chat's just a VR place where you chat. It's like, no, 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 no. You don't, you haven't been down the VR chat rabbit hole. There's like millions of mini games, and VR chat is just all a ton of games. It's like Roblox. VR chat is like Roblox. And so anyway, this is all my like long tangent of just saying that like I am a super lifelong gamer, lifelong computer nerd or whatever. And so I have like very strong thoughts on, these words that people who aren't coming from traditional gaming, or people who are just kind of coming out of random different industries and then they're trying to get into it. It's like, well, I think, maybe we should like redefine some of these terms or maybe get rid of some of these terms. I don't know that they're all like super helpful. I mean, it's like a few years ago, like the word blockchain was the word to use, and then the word crypto is the word to use, and now the word Web3 is the word to use. And so I wonder, it's like, what are we just going to keep like changing the word every like 3 years? And it's funny. I wonder that sometimes. And I don't know how like helpful any of these words are, but I'm always thinking about the games first, and I'm always thinking about like, how do we cut through the buzzwords and get to the truth of what's really happening and what people are really making. And sometimes when I explore people's projects, they're like, oh yeah, it's a metaverse game, blah, blah, blah. Like, you're going to love it. And then I see it and I'm like, oh, this is like, to me, like, this isn't what I was expecting. Cause you said it was a game, you said it was a metaverse, but it feels very 2D. It feels very like early 2000s, like internet experience, where it's sort of like, I'm like a paper doll entering like a flat screen space. And it doesn't really feel like what we see now in games. Like, I think coming from a AAA game, I'm like a AAA gaming junkie, right? For like battle royales and like shooters and stuff like that. So I try to always like manage my expectations for any game, right? I try to not expect that like AAA quality from an indie dev, obviously. I try to be reasonable and like change my mindset for each thing. But sometimes for me, I think some people in Web3 are hinging way too much of their like appeal or perceived appeal on those buzzwords. And they're not recognizing that for me, that's, yes, that might be what gets me to look at your project, but it isn't going to be what sells me on your project. It needs to stand on its own without the Web3, to be honest.
Do you have any favorite projects right now that has really wowed you?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, so I haven't like bought any NFTs from any Web3 game yet. I kind of said earlier, I'm like still just play testing everything for free and demoing everything for free and checking everything out. And I think coming from the free to play era, that is really important and really smart, and game devs need to do that. There's a lot of games that I've enjoyed and that I've been impressed by, though, just in terms of the quality of the game and like the developers behind it and the way that it runs. Like, they're very smooth, clean games. Like, they're not obviously forcing like transactions on you in the game or anything like that. Like, they get it. They understand that they need to make a good game that has like esports potential and like viral potential and like Twitch potential. Like that is really important. Video game industry is not easy to succeed in, even for traditional developers. And there are so many games on Steam. Like, the market is very saturated, and there are just certain games just aren't quite catching. Other games are. And it's interesting to sort of look at like a game like League of Legends, like, okay, that game caught on and is still extremely popular so many years later. World of Warcraft, extremely popular so many years later. Like, why? And you kind of think about it. And if you like really dive into the reasons behind like why those games are still popular now, there's so many reasons. But in the indie game space, which I think is where a lot of Web3 games are going to probably fall, there's also a whole other sort of set of obstacles that you have to face. But to answer your question, a couple games that I have been following and tracking and I'm excited about kind of are across genres. I mean, there's Shrapnel, obviously, which is a first person shooter game that has an extraction mode that I played at GDC last month. And I loved it. I thought it was super immersive. It felt like it could be a Ubisoft game or an Activision game. Like it felt very AAA, very clean. I was very impressed. I thought it was very cinematic as well. Something about like the lighting and the audio sound, like the way they were doing sound was really nice.
Yeah. Kate, you're clearly a thought leader. I do have to run to another call, and this is a great segue because I'd love to do this again and even put in your social media handles at the bottom of this video description, because you have me, you have my attention this entire time. Clearly, you know, you're at the forefront of this Web3. And so for anyone listening, please follow Kate. I'm going to put all of her social media handles, links. Please follow Decrypt as well. And I'd love to do this again. And almost that's a cliffhanger. So Shrapnel, and you had some other ones that you're going to mention. So let's leave that for another episode.
Oh my gosh, there are so many other games, guys. I wish we had more time. I could go on for hours about this.
We'll do another one. So yeah, anyone in the comment section, please comment below what you'd like us to cover on the next one. But Kate, this is fantastic, and absolutely delighted. You have a new follower in me, and just going to be tracking everything you're doing. So
thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay. Well, thanks, Kate. Okay. Take care. Bye.